about Lily, Nora thanked them and made her way back through the hallways. She paused at the memorial plaque near the entrance, a simple bronze square with Lily's school photo and the dates that marked too short a life. Fresh flowers sat in a small vase beneath it, and someone had left a teddy bear. Outside, the afternoon shadows stretched long across the parking lot. 8 years had scattered everyone who might have seen something that morning, dispersed them like seeds on the wind. The janitor, with his confirmed alibi, the retired teachers in their new lives, Harold Walsh, no longer at his post. All these people who had been part of Lily's daily world now moved on, while Lily herself had been trapped in that horrible crawl space. The frustration built in her chest as she walked to her car. Every lead seemed to end in a wall, every trail grown cold. With time, but something nagged at her. The timing of those rental payments, stopping the cluster of retirements. Probably nothing, she told herself. Just her desperate mind grasping at straws. The fuel gauge needle hovered just above empty as Nora drove through town, her mind still processing the horrors of the crawl space and the frustrating dead ends at the school. She'd been running on adrenaline since Detective Martinez's call that morning, but now exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. Her hands trembled on the steering wheel, and she knew she needed to stop before she became dangerous on the road. The Chevron station on the edge of town appeared like a familiar beacon. How many times had she pulled in here during those desperate weeks 8 years ago? The owner, Dev Patel, had been one of the first to put up her missing person flyers, taping them to every pump and window. His employees had joined search parties on their days off, walking through fields and forests in the summer heat. This place had been a refueling stop in more ways than one during those dark days. She pulled up to pump 3 and went through, the motions of inserting her credit card, but the machine beeped angrily. "See cashier," the screen demanded. Of course, nothing could be simple today. Leaving the nozzle in her tank, she trudged toward the store entrance. The familiar bell chimed overhead as she pushed open the glass door. The same faded linoleum, the same humming refrigerator cases, the same rack of air fresheners by the register. Even the smell was unchanged. A mixture of coffee, industrial cleaner, and gasoline fumes. 2 customers stood in line ahead of her, and she mindlessly studied the candy display while waiting. The man at the counter was purchasing an odd assortment: a pint of strawberry ice cream, a small propane canister, and a pack of D batteries. His voice, when he thanked the cashier, sent a jolt of recognition through her. That gentle cadence, the slight whistle on his S, sounds from ill-fitting dentures. Harold Walsh. He'd aged in the year since she'd last seen him. His shoulders curved inward more pronouncedly, and his thick white hair had thinned to wisps combed carefully over his scalp. The fluorescent lights cast deep shadows under his eyes, and his crossing guard's confident posture had given way to the cautious movements of the elderly. As he turned from the counter, receipt in hand, his pale blue eyes met hers. They widened with recognition, and his weathered face creased into that familiar sad smile that she'd seen so often during the searches. "Nora," he said softly, shifting his purchases to one arm. "I heard about what they found this morning. I'm so sorry." The genuine pain in his voice made her throat constrict. Here was someone who truly cared, who'd walked miles searching. For Lily, who'd wept at the memorial services. "Harold," she managed, "I heard you retired. How are you doing?" He glanced toward the parking lot where she now noticed an old Winnebago parked at the far pump. The RV had seen better days. Rust spotted its cream-colored sides, and duct tape patched one window. "Getting by. Been doing some traveling with my niece." He paused, adjusting his grip on the ice cream. Well, adopted niece, really. Her parents passed when she was young, so I took her in. Seemed the Christian thing to do. Through the open door of the camper, Nora could see movement. A girl, maybe 14, sat at the small dinette table, visible through the side window. Long blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail around her face than Lily would have, wearing a faded blue t-shirt. The girl was focused on something, a book perhaps, absently licking an ice cream spoon. That's wonderful of you, Nora said, meaning it. After losing his wife to cancer decades ago, Harold had never remarried. She'd assumed he was alone in his retirement. Taking in a child at your age, that's quite a commitment. Family is family, Harold said simply, moving toward the door. Nora followed, oddly comforted by this unexpected encounter with someone who'd shared her loss. I'd love to meet her, Nora said as they stepped into the afternoon heat. It's nice to think of you having company after everything. She trailed off, walking alongside him toward the Winnebago. The change was instant and jarring. Harold's shuffling gait suddenly quickened. His shoulders went rigid, and he stepped sideways, putting himself between Nora and the camper. She's very shy with strangers, he said, his previous warmth evaporating. Like morning dew. We really need to get going. Long drive ahead. Oh, I didn't mean to intrude, Nora said, taken aback by his sudden coldness. I just thought, Sarah, get away from the door, Harold called sharply, practically jogging the remaining distance to the RV. The girl looked up, confused, and in that brief moment, Nora's breath caught the freckles. Even from 20 feet away, even in the shadow of the camper, that distinctive pattern was visible. A perfect triangle of 3 freckles on the bridge of her nose, with 2 smaller ones forming a line below. Not scattered randomly like most children's freckles, but a specific constellation that Nora had kissed goodnight thousands of times. Harold was already at the camper, yanking the door shut with a bang that made the girl jump. Through the window, Nora saw her mouth move, asking a question perhaps, before Harold's hand pressed her away from the glass. He climbed into the driver's seat without a backward glance, starting the engine with a roar of black exhaust. Harold, Nora called, but the Winnebago was already moving, pulling away from the pump with the gas hose still connected to his tank. It popped free with a metallic clang, the safety valve shutting off the flow as the hose recoiled. Harold didn't stop, didn't even slow down, just accelerated onto the highway, heading north. Nora stood frozen in the parking lot, watching the Winnebago disappear around the curve. The cashier had come out, shouting about the damaged pump, but his words were just noise. All she could see was that pattern of freckles, that unique constellation that the forensic artist had carefully replicated in every age progression photo. She was being paranoid. 8 years of false sightings had trained her to see Lily everywhere. The girl looked nothing like her daughter would. Wrong coloring, wrong build, wrong everything except those freckles and Harold's reaction. The gentle old crossing guard who'd organized searches, who'd wept at memorials, had practically fled rather than let her near that girl. His transformation from sympathetic friend to panicked stranger left her deeply unsettled, a cold weight settling in her stomach that had nothing to do with the day's earlier revelations. The kitchen felt too quiet as Nora stood at the stove, watching water refuse to boil. She'd pulled out a box of pasta 20 minutes ago, but her hands kept stilling, her mind drifting back to that gas station encounter. The pot sat forgotten as she stared through the window at nothing, seeing only that brief glimpse of freckles across a teenage girl's nose. She forced herself to move, dumping pasta into water that was barely simmering. The girl looked nothing like Lily would look now. Wrong hair, blonde where Lily's had been, that distinctive red-brown, heavier build when Lily had been slight. Almost elfin, different facial structure entirely. Thousands of girls had freckles, millions. She was doing what she'd sworn she'd stopped doing years ago, seeing her daughter in every young face. But Harold's reaction, the pasta water boiled over, hissing against the burner. Nora yanked the pot off the heat, not even bothering to clean up the mess. That transformation from sympathetic old friend to panicked stranger played on repeat in her mind. The way he'd practically shoved the girl back, slammed the door, fled with his gas hose. Still attached. That wasn't grief making someone protective. That was fear. She abandoned the pasta entirely and reached for her phone. "Detective Martinez," she said when he answered. "I'm sorry to bother you again." "No bother, Mrs. Whitfield. What can I help you with?" She tried to keep her voice casual, reasonable. "I was wondering during the original investigation, was Harold Walsh ever looked at the crossing guard?" She heard typing the click of a mouse. "Let me pull up the old files." Harold Walsh, age 70 at the time. Yes, he was interviewed, along with all school personnel. Clean background check. No criminal history, not even a parking ticket. 30-year reputation as a devoted school employee. Says here he was devastated by the disappearance. Organized multiple search parties. More clicking. "Is there a reason you're asking about him specifically?" Nora hesitated. How could she explain a feeling, a pattern of freckles, a moment of strange behavior? "I ran into him at the gas station today. He has custody of a young girl now. Adopted niece," he said. "He just seemed oddly defensive when I tried to meet her. Practically ran away." Martinez's voice carried gentle. Well-practiced Operation Marcus. Carefully retreated through the forest his mind. Racing, he'd found the conspiracy a Sherritt, corrupted into facilitating drug and human trafficking, who'd murdered federal agents to protect the operation. But now, they knew he was a threat and they were accelerating their timeline, the northern site. Thompson mentioned was that where Ella Lenina had been held, where she might have died. The reference to cleaning it up like 8 years ago suggested Thompson had disposed of evidence before possibly Alina herself. Marcus reached his vehicle and immediately checked for surveillance or tracking devices. A precaution that now seemed preont. Rather than paranoid finding nothing, he started the engine and drove carefully back toward town using a different route than his approach. His phone showed no signal as expected in these remote areas, preventing him from calling for backup. The dashboard clock read for 47 p.m. Thompson had promised to meet him with an informant at 5 p.m. Obviously, a trap now. The sheriff would expect him to show up, would be waiting with his smuggling partners to eliminate another federal agent who'd gotten too close to the truth. But Marcus had evidence now, photos, names, locations. More importantly, he knew about the northern warehouse and the planned evacuation tonight. If trafficking victims were being held there, if evidence about Elena's fate existed at that site, he had only hours to act. The weight of his service weapon felt reassuring against his ribs, but Marcus knew he was outgunned and outnumbered. Thompson had the advantage of knowing the terrain, having allies, and operating outside the law. Marcus had only his training, his determination, and the hope that somewhere in that northern warehouse he might finally find answers about his sister's fate. Marcus's hands shook as he fumbled for his phone, still processing what he'd witnessed at the lumber mill. Agent David Chen answered on the second ring, his voice immediately sharpening at Marcus' tone. David, I need backup at my location, full tactical team, highest priority. Marcus, what's your situation, Sheriff? Wade Thompson is dirty. I've got photographic evidence of him meeting with known smugglers, taking payoffs. They mentioned Alina. David, they're planning to clear out a warehouse tonight, moving trafficking victims. Jesus Christ, where are you exactly? Marcus rattled off his GPS coordinates, adding, I'm about 40 miles northeast of Cascade Ridge, near the old Brackenridge Mill. Thompson's still on site with 3 suspects, Victor Koff, Chen Wei, and Robert Tanner. I know those names, we've been after them for years. Chen's voice carried the weight of understanding. I can mobilize a team, but Marcus, you're in the middle of nowhere. It'll take at least an hour to reach you, maybe more. An hour. Marcus' heart sank. In an hour, evidence could be destroyed, victims moved, and any trace of Elena's fate erased forever. That's pushing it hard. I'll scramble everyone available, but Chen paused. Marcus, do not engage alone. You're outnumbered and outgunned. Through his binoculars, Marcus watched Thompson stride urgently toward his patrol vehicle. The sheriff's entire demeanor had changed. Gone was the calculated calm from the meeting. Now he moved with barely controlled panic, yanking open a concealed compartment behind the rear seat of his cruiser. David, he's on the move. Thompson's pulling items from a hidden compartment. Marcus focused the binoculars, his breath catching as he catalogued what Thompson was extracting. Stacks of documents went into a duffel bag, followed by what looked like bundles of cash wrapped in plastic. Then came the weapons, a tactical shotgun, and what appeared to be an AR-15, both non-standard for a county sheriff. He's got an exit strategy prepared, Marcus reported documents. Cash-heavy weapons. This isn't spontaneous. He's had a bug-out bag ready, which means he always knew this day might come, Chen said grimly. Marcus, fall back, wait for the team. But even as Chen spoke, Thompson's phone rang through the binoculars. Marcus watched the sheriff's face contort with rage. Thompson gestured wildly, shouting something inaudible, then slammed his phone against the patrol car's hood. Whatever news he'd received had shattered his composure entirely. Thompson threw the duffel bag into his vehicle and peeled out gravel, spraying as he accelerated down a Forest Service road leading deeper into the wilderness. He's running, Marcus said, already moving toward his Honda, heading north on a service road deeper into the forest. Marcus, don't. David, he mentioned cleaning up a northern site like he did 8 years ago. He knows where Alina is. This might be my only chance. God damn it. Chun's frustration carried clearly through the phone. Keep your phone on. I'll track your GPS as long as you have signaled. The team will follow your trail. Marcus started the Honda, pulling onto the service road at a distance that would keep Thompson's dust cloud visible without revealing his pursuit. The sheriff was driving recklessly, taking curves at dangerous speeds, his patrol car's heavier frame swaying dangerously on the gravel surface. The route felt familiar, and Marcus realized why Thompson was following the old smuggling trails. He'd studied in the case files paths that predated modern roads and led to remote border crossings. These were the same routes Alina and Sarah had been investigating 8 years ago. He's heading toward the sectors he marked as impassable during the original search. Marcus reported to Chen the areas he steered us away from. Those bastards, Chen muttered. Update me every few minutes while you have signal. But as they climbed higher into the mountains, Marcus watched his phone signal bars drop one by one. The dense forest and mountainous terrain created dead zones that modern technology couldn't penetrate. He managed one final update before losing connection entirely. David, I'm on Forest Road 347. Heading north toward grid reference. He rattled off the coordinates he'd memorized from the old search maps. These are the areas Thompson declared thoroughly searched. If you lose me, start here. Marcus Chen's voice crackled and died as the signal vanished, now truly alone. Marcus continued his pursuit as the sun sank lower, painting the forest in deep oranges. And shadows. Thompson's driving had become even more erratic, his patrol car fishtailing on loose, gravel branches scraping against its sides as he barely stayed on the narrow road after another 15 minutes of winding through increasingly dense forest. Thompson's brake lights flared ahead. Marcus immediately killed his headlights, coasting to a stop behind a thick stand of pines. He grabbed his tactical flashlight and extra magazines, checking his service weapon one more time before exiting the vehicle. The forest felt alive with small sounds, wind through pine needles, distant bird calls, the crack of cooling metal from Thompson's engine. Marcus moved carefully through the underbrush, using skills honed in tactical training to remain silent on the forest floor. The trees opened into a small clearing, barely visible in the fading twilight. Thompson's patrol car sat askew, driver's door open, interior light creating a small pool of illumination. The sheriff himself stood 20 feet away, at a patch of ground that looked different from the surrounding forest floor. The earth was slightly depressed vegetation, younger and sparser than the established growth around it. Thompson had retrieved a shovel from his trunk and was digging, frantically throwing soil aside with desperate energy. His voice carried in the still air a stream of panicked muttering. Should have moved her years ago. Knew this would happen. Can't let them find this site evidence. Still here, stupid to keep it so close. Marcus felt his heart constrict. Her Thompson was digging up Elena's grave. Drawing his Glock, Marcus stepped into the clearing, dropped the shovel. Thompson, hands where I can see them. The sheriff spun his hand, moving toward his holstered weapon. Marcus had already anticipated the move, his weapon-trained center mass. Don't. Marcus warned, it's over. Wade, drop the shovel and step away from the grave. Thompson's face was stirred with sweat and dirt, his eyes wild in the dying light, but instead of complying, he laughed, a broken sound that held no humor. The grave, you think? This is her grave. Thompson shook his head. Jesus, Rivera, you really don't understand what your sister stumbled into. Then explain it to me. Marcus kept his weapon steady, despite the tremor in his voice. Tell me what happened to Elena. Thompson let the shovel fall, but kept his hand near his weapon. She was supposed to be routine surveillance, just another federal agent, checking smuggling routes, filing reports no one would read. But Elena, she was too good at her job to persistent keep talking. Marcus could feel the weight of the moment, knowing he was finally about to learn the truth. She found a transfer point by accident. We were moving a shipment, drugs and girls, the usual run. Sarah Collins tried to call it in, immediately went for her radio. Thompson's voice turned cold. Clove shot her before she could say a word. Clean shot to the head. She died instantly. And Elena was smarter. She tried to retreat to get back to their vehicle, but we couldn't let her go, not after what she'd seen. The operation was too valuable. Millions in drugs, dozens of girls moved through our corridor every year. Thompson wiped sweat from his forehead with a dirty hand. The bosses wanted her alive. They needed to know what the D knew. Who else was investigating? How much time we had before more agents came? Marcus' grip on his weapon tightened. You tortured her for 2 months. Thompson's admission came out flat. Matter of fact, kept her in a shipping container we'd converted into cells for the difficult merchandise. The bosses brought in a specialist, someone who knew how to break people without killing them. But your sister, he shook his head with something almost like admiration. Elena was tougher than anyone expected. Tell me everything.